AITA for not sharing my lottery winnings with a coworker who usually buys tickets with me, but didn't that day? I, 34M, have worked at the same accounting firm for nearly 8 years. About 3 years ago, a new colleague, Mitch, 36M, joined our department. We hit off immediately since we both loved the same sports teams and shared similar interests in gaming and sci-fi movies. Our friendship developed quickly, and we became what I consider work best friends. About 2 years ago, we started a little tradition. Every Friday, we'd each put in $5 for lottery tickets, $10 total, and we'd take turns buying them. The agreement was simple. Whoever's turn it was would go to the gas station near our office during lunch, buy the tickets, and if we won anything, we'd split it 50-50ths. In the beginning, we won small amounts here and there, $20 once, $50 another time. Nothing major, but it made Fridays more exciting. Fast forward to 3 weeks ago. It was my turn to buy the tickets that Friday. I reminded Mitch in the morning as usual, but he seemed distracted and stressed. Around 11 a.m., he came to my desk looking apologetic. "Hey, man, I hate to do this, but I can't do the lottery today. Jessica's car broke down, and I had to transfer her some money for the repairs. I'm a bit tight this week." Jessica is his wife, and I knew they were saving for a house down payment. So I completely understood. "No worries at all," I told him. "Things happen. We'll pick it up next week." But then I had a thought. I'd already mentally set aside that $5, and the gas station was on my way to the sandwich place I like for lunch anyway. I decided I'd still buy a ticket, just for myself this time. I didn't mention this to Mitch because, honestly, it didn't seem relevant. It wasn't our usual joint purchase, just me buying a ticket with my own money. I got a Mega Millions ticket and didn't think much more about it. That weekend, I was doing laundry when I remembered the ticket. I pulled it out of my wallet and checked the numbers against the drawing online. I had to check 3 times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'd matched 5 numbers, not the jackpot, but enough for a $250,000 prize. After the initial shock wore off, I called my parents and my brother. They were thrilled for me. I didn't go crazy celebrating because I wanted to be smart about it. After taxes, I'd clear about $175,000, which is life-changing money for me, but not quit-your-job money. I decided I'd pay off my student loans, $43K, put down payment on a modest house instead of continuing to rent, contribute to my niece's college fund, and invest the rest. Pretty responsible plans, I thought. Monday morning came, and I went to work as usual, though admittedly with a permanent smile on my face. I wasn't planning to tell people at work right away. I wanted to process everything first and claim the prize officially. By Wednesday, I'd submitted all the paperwork for my winnings. That same day, during lunch, a few colleagues were talking about the lottery drawing from the weekend, mentioning that someone in our city had won a significant prize. Without thinking, I smiled a bit too obviously, and one of my more observant coworkers, Danny, called me out. "Wait, did you win something?" I'm a terrible liar, so I admitted it. Actually, yeah, I hit 5 numbers on Friday's drawing. The news spread to the office like wildfire. Most people were genuinely happy for me, offering congratulations and joking that I should buy the next round of drinks at happy hour. Then Mitch came over to my desk. At first, he seemed excited, giving me a big pat on the back. "Dude, that's amazing. Our luck finally paid off, huh?" This is where things got uncomfortable. I explained to him quietly that it wasn't our ticket. It was one I bought separately with just my own money after he had opted out that week. His face fell immediately. But we always play together. That's our system. I tried to explain again that yes, we did have a system, but he had specifically said he couldn't participate that week. So I bought this ticket independently. He walked away looking upset. About an hour later, he sent me an email asking if we could talk after work. We met at a coffee shop near the office, and that's when things really deteriorated. Mitch argued that our arrangement was an ongoing partnership, and that the only reason he didn't contribute that week was because of a temporary financial setback. He said if the situation had been reversed, he would have split the winnings with me without question. It was my turn to buy anyway, he pointed out, suggesting that if he had gone instead of me, he would have bought tickets for both of us despite the financial strain. and we would have shared the prize. When I held firm that this was a separate purchase I made with my own money after our regular arrangement had been called off for the week, he became increasingly agitated. He mentioned that his wife's car repairs had cost $1,800 and that they were going to have to delay their house hunting again. "So you're really going to let $125,000 end our friendship?" he asked. "That's what I'm worth to you." I told him I valued our friendship greatly. But this wasn't about friendship. It was about the fact that we had clearly paused our arrangement for that week. By the end of the conversation, he was barely speaking to me, just saying he needed time to process everything. The next day at work was incredibly tense. Mitch told some of our coworkers a side of the story, and the office has become somewhat divided. Several people have told me I'm being unfair, and that the spirit of my arrangement with Mitch should count more than the technicality that he didn't contribute that week. Others have taken my side, saying that Mitch opted out, and I was free to spend my own money however I wanted after that. My boss has even had to step in and tell people to focus on work and leave personal matters at home. To make matters worse, Mitch's wife Jessica texted me yesterday. She and my girlfriend have hung out a few times at office functions. She was much more direct, calling me selfish and saying I was taking advantage of her husband's temporary financial hardship to cut him out of money that should be partially his. I've started to wonder if I'm missing something here. The money isn't even in my account yet, and it's already causing so much drama. Part of me wonders if I should just give Mitch some money to preserve the peace. But another part feels like I'm being emotionally manipulated into sharing a prize that's legitimately mine. So, Reddit, AITA for not sharing my lottery winnings with Mitch when he opted out of our usual arrangement that week. Edit 1. Wow! This blew up overnight. Thanks for all the responses. To answer some common questions. We never had any formal written agreement, just a verbal understanding that we'd each put in $5 every Friday and split any winnings from those specific tickets. Yes, there were weeks in the past when one of us couldn't make it to buy the tickets, usually because of meetings or being out of office, but we'd always transfer the $5 to the other person in those cases. This was the first time either of us completely opted out of putting in money. Regarding whether I told Mitch I was still buying a ticket just for myself. No, I didn't explicitly tell him. After he said he couldn't participate, our conversation moved on to other topics, and then he went back to his desk. I didn't think I needed to announce that I was using my own $5 to buy a personal ticket. Edit 2. The situation has escalated. Mitch is now telling people he's considering legal action. I've spoken to a lawyer friend who assured me that without any written contract, and with Mitch explicitly opting out that week, I'm on solid legal ground. Still, the workplace has become almost unbearable. HR has now scheduled a meeting with both of us for tomorrow morning. Edit 3. The HR meeting was interesting. They made it clear this was a personal matter that shouldn't affect workplace dynamics, but also suggested I consider whether the money was worth the professional relationship damage. I felt like they were subtly pressuring me to share the winnings just to restore workplace harmony, which seems unfair. I've decided to take a few personal days to clear my head and make a final decision. Mitch has been moved to a different project temporarily to minimize friction, according to our manager. Edit 4. After much reflection, I've decided to stand my ground. The money will make a significant difference in my life, paying off student debt and helping with a home purchase. And while I value workplace harmony, I don't think I should have to pay $125,000 for it. I've offered Mitch a small goodwill amount, $5,000, as recognition of our friendship and our past lottery partnership, but made it clear this is a gift, not an admission that he's entitled to half. He rejected this offer and said it was insulting. At this point, I'm considering looking for another job. The environment has become too toxic, with people taking sides and making comments. I never expected winning money could make life more complicated, but here we are. Thanks for all your perspectives, Reddit. It's helped me see that while money matters, my peace of mind matters more. I'll update if anything significant changes. Story 2. AITA for setting a no phones at dinner rule for my teenage children and enforcing it when they break it. I, 43F, am a single mother to 3 teenagers. Zoe, 17F, Mason, 15M, and Lily, 13F. Their father and I divorced when Lily was just 3, and while he sees them every other weekend, I handle the day-to-day parenting. I work as a hospital administrator, which means long, unpredictable hours, but I've always prioritized family dinner as our sacred time together. Growing up, dinner in my household was when we connected as a family. My parents insisted we all sit down together, no matter how busy our schedules were. We talked about our days, discussed current events, laughed, and sometimes even argued, but we were present for each other. This tradition meant so much to me that when I had my own children, I vowed to continue it. When the kids were younger, family dinners were magical. Zoe would enthusiastically share stories from school. Mason would tell jokes that had us all in stitches, even when it made no sense. And little Lily would insist on saying grace, even though we weren't particularly religious. As a newly single mom, those dinners became my anchor. The one time I could feel like we were still a complete family unit despite the divorce. Then smartphones entered our lives. It started gradually. A quick text here, checking Instagram there. Soon, all three kids were bringing their phones to the table, responding to notifications, scrolling through TikTok, and essentially checking out of our family time. Conversations dwindled to one-word answers. Eye contact became rare. Some nights, the only sounds at our table were the scraping of forks and the tapping of screens. 6 months ago, after a particularly silent dinner where I realized I hadn't heard Lily's voice once, I decided enough was enough. I called a family meeting and announced a new rule: no phones at dinner, period. I bought a decorative basket for the kitchen counter and explained that before dinner, everyone, myself included, would place their phones in the basket. Dinner would last a minimum of 30 minutes, and afterward, they could retrieve their devices. The initial reaction was what you expect from teenagers: outrage. Zoe argued she needed to be available for her friends and college admissions officers, even at 7 p.m. Mason claimed he was using his phone to check homework assignments, though I'd caught him watching gaming videos. Lily, who used to be my little chatterbox, dramatically declared I was literally ruining her life and didn't understand how important social connections were. I held firm. I explained that 30 minutes of focused family time wasn't too much to ask, and that the world wouldn't end if they were briefly unavailable to their friends. I even suggested we create a phone emergency protocol. If someone really needed to reach them, they could call our landline. Yes, I've kept one specifically for emergencies. The first week was rough. Zoe would sigh heavily throughout dinner. Mason would stare longingly at the basket. Lily would finish eating in record time and ask to be excused, request denied. But slowly, miraculously, things began to change. Without digital distractions, real conversations emerged. We rediscovered inside jokes. We debated topics ranging from climate change to whether cereal is technically a soup. Mason's position: absolutely yes. For several months, the system worked. Not perfectly. There were still complaints and occasional attempt to sneak a phone to the table. But overall, I felt like I was rebuilding connection with my children that had been gradually eroding. Then came last Tuesday. I was running late from work. A patient crisis had erupted just as I was leaving, and I texted the kids that I'd be home 45 minutes later than usual. When I finally arrived, frazzled and hungry, I found all three of them at the dinner table, each absorbed in their phones. They had prepared dinner, pasta with jar sauce, but I was touched by the effort. Yet they weren't talking to each other. They were physically together, but mentally miles apart. Something in me snapped. I didn't yell. I've always tried to avoid that. But my voice was definitely stern as I reminded them of our rule. Zoe rolled her eyes and said, "We didn't know when you'd be home, so we didn't think it counted tonight." I took a deep breath and said, "The rule isn't no phones when mom is at dinner. It's no phones at dinner, period. It's about respecting our time together, whether I'm running late or not." With obvious reluctance, they put their phones in the basket. Dinner proceeded awkwardly, with minimal conversation despite my attempts to engage them. When our mandatory 30 minutes were up, they each retrieved their phones and disappeared to their rooms without helping clear the table, something they normally do without prompting. The next morning, Mason told me I was being psycho strict about the phone rule and that no other parents were this controlling. Lily suggested that my phone rule was making them want to spend less time at home. But it was Zoe's comment that really hurt. You're so obsessed with forcing us to be this perfect family that you can't see how miserable you're making everyone. That evening, after much reflection, I called another family meeting. I explained that the phone rule wasn't about control, but connection. I shared how much our family dinners had meant to me growing up and how worried I was that technology was creating distance between us. I admitted that I miss hearing about their days and feeling like we were truly present with each other. I proposed a compromise. We would maintain the no-phone rule 4 nights a week, but on the other 3, they could keep their phones with them with the understanding that they should only check them if necessary, not scroll continuously. Their response was lukewarm at best. Zoe said my obsession with family dinner was outdated and weird. Mason suggested that if I wanted to talk more, I should have more interesting things to talk about. Lily, my youngest, said nothing. She just stared at her hands. I ended the meeting feeling defeated and questioning everything. Was I being unreasonable? Were my attempt to foster family connection actually driving them away? Was I imposing my own childhood experiences on them unfairly? The situation came to a head yesterday when I came home to find all 3 kids once again at the dinner table with their phones out. This was a designated no-phone evening, according to our new compromise. I reminded them of this, and Zoe said flatly, "We voted and decided the phone rule is stupid." I'll admit I lost my cool. I told them that our home wasn't a democracy when it came to basic respect and family values. I collected their phones, despite significant protest, and informed them they would lose phone privileges entirely for the next 3 days. The ensuing argument was ugly. Zoe stormed out of the house to her friend Emily's next door. Mason called me a control freak. Lily burst into tears, saying I was ruining her social life and that she'd be a total outcast without her phone. My sister, who I call for moral support, suggested I was being too rigid and that kids these days communicate differently. My ex-husband texted that the children had called him upset, and he thought I was being unreasonable. Even my mother, who had enforced similar rules in my childhood, gently suggested that perhaps I needed to pick my battles. I've spent all day wondering if I've massively overreached. My intention was to preserve a cherished family tradition and ensure we maintain our bonds through their teenage years. Instead, I seem to have created a full-scale rebellion. So, Reddit, AITA for insisting on this no-phone rule at dinner and enforcing consequences when they broke it. Edit 1. Wow, I didn't expect this to get so much attention. Thank you all for your perspectives. I want to clarify a few things based on common questions. Yes, I do follow the rule myself. My phone goes in the basket too, and I've only broken this rule once when I was on call for work. Regarding what we talk about, I do make efforts to discuss things they're interested in. I ask about their friends, activities, and interests. I don't force boring adult topics on them. Some suggested I might be using dinner to interrogate them. I promise I'm not. I'm genuinely interested in their lives and try to share things about my day too, not just question them. A few people asked about their father's house rules. From what the kids tell me, it's basically a free-for-all with technology over there, which does make my rules seem stricter by comparison. Edit 2. After reading many comments, I had a long conversation with each child individually last night. Some revelations came up that I hadn't considered. Zoe confessed she's been dealing with anxiety about college applications and uses her phone to check college forums and emails constantly. Her fear is missing important deadlines or information. Mason admitted he feels put on the spot at dinner when asked about his day, as he struggles with social anxiety. His phone serves as a buffer when he feels uncomfortable. Lily, my quietest lately, shared something that broke my heart. She said she feels like nothing she says at dinner is important enough compared to her older siblings, so she'd rather just scroll on her phone. I apologize to each of them for not considering their individual needs and perspectives. We're going to try a new approach starting tonight. Edit 3. We had a productive dinner tonight. Instead of a blanket phone ban, we tried something new. Phones are silenced and placed face down on the table, not away in a basket. Everyone gets one phone check during dinner if they feel they need it. I brought conversation starter cards, thanks to that suggestion Reddit, which removed the pressure of coming up with topics. We agreed that anyone can call a phone break if conversation becomes uncomfortable, but they need to briefly explain why. The result? We had the most animated dinner conversation in months. Mason actually laughed so hard he snorted milk through his nose, something that hasn't happened since he was 10. Zoe only checked her phone once, and Lily shared a detailed story about her art project that had everyone engaged. I realize now my mistake wasn't in wanting connection. It was in trying to force it through rigid rules rather than understanding and addressing why they were retreating to their phones in the first place. Edit 4. 1 week later, the new system has been working surprisingly well. We've established Tech-Free Tuesday and Family Friday, where phones are completely away, but the other nights follow our compromise system. I've noticed they're checking their phones less overall, and Zoe actually suggested we extend dinner by 15 minutes last night because we were in the middle of a fascinating debate about whether time travel would be worth it. I'm learning that parenting teenagers means constantly adapting. What worked for my parents with me won't necessarily work with my kids. The goal remains the same, connection, but the path to get there has to evolve. Thank you, Reddit, for helping me see the situation from different angles. Sometimes being a parent means knowing when to bend so you don't break. Final update. It's been a month since my original post, and I wanted to share that we found sustainable balance. The kids have actually started voluntarily putting their phones away more often, not just at dinner. Last weekend, Lily suggested a board game night with no electronics, which felt like a major win. Mason told me yesterday that his friend's parents have started implementing similar dinner rules after he mentioned how our conversations had improved. And Zoe, my most resistant child initially, admitted that she's sleeping better since she's not checking her phone constantly during family time. I realized that this was never really about phones. It was about feeling heard and respected on both sides. Once we addressed the underlying needs, the phone issue largely resolved itself. For those struggling with similar challenges, keep the dialogue open, be willing to compromise, and remember that connection is the goal, not control. Sometimes the strictest rule isn't the most effective one. Thank you for reading.